And hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Blockchain Talks. I'm your host, Dimi H, crypto and Bitcoin educator. So, in today's live stream, I want to talk a little bit about, to put it that way, about the Blocksize wars and the newly revamped narrative concerning it all. Now, let me first give a little introduction about the Blocksize wars and why I'm really talking about the last couple of days about Blocksize wars 2.0 in regards to Bitcoin. Now, what were the Blocksize wars? Well, the Blocksize wars was something which occurred somewhere during the bull run of 2017-2018. Back in the day, we saw that transaction fees were rising tremendously. And, well, naturally, with rising transaction fees in regards to Bitcoin, comes that, well, it becomes quite difficult to make more transactions on the blockchain, meaning it becomes costly. For some reason, my internet is suddenly going down, but yeah, no worries. I hope it stays fine. Anyway, so with Blocksize wars, everything boils down towards transaction fees. During bull runs, and we are going to see that immediately. Here's a little chart of transaction fees over time. During bull runs, we see that transaction fees tend to be high. This is a direct result. I'm not sharing my screen. Not being very smart here. Present, share screen. We can tell it's been a while. The smoothness of it all is gone. There we go. So, as I was saying, these are the charts. Bitcoin average transaction fee over time. You can clearly see during each bull run, so when Bitcoin was reaching new all-time highs, you can see the transaction fees were exploding towards the top as well. You can see it in previous bull runs as well. Naturally, this one isn't as well. Previous ones from 2016, etc., aren't as clear here on the chart. You can zoom in so you guys can see, but 2018, 2021, and yet to come, 2025. Well, they were all pretty intensive. And this led to inner turmoil within the Bitcoin community, because with high transaction fees, less transactions could be made onto the Bitcoin blockchain, meaning less money, less Bitcoin could be transacted peer-to-peer among people. Because, let's be fair, with a high transaction fee, you aren't really going to transact willy-nilly, in the sense that, for example, here in 2017, you had an average transaction fee of $54. Well, you're not going to transact $100 worth of Bitcoin with transaction fee of 54. If you have several thousand, then you might. So transaction fees are a little bit, how to say, a dampener on network activity, but they are as well a result of network activity, meaning the higher transaction fees at overall and at average get, the more you can conclude that there's more network activity. That's the theory. Over 2017, 2018, due to, for the very first time, seeing such high fees, well, discussion erupted in the Bitcoin community, and several proposals and fixes were being offered. One of them, and that's why we call it the Blocksize wars, was to increase the current block size of Bitcoin as we know it. You had proponents, and you had opponents. A majority of people said, no, we want to keep it the way it is. We need to find other ways to, well, lower transaction fees, and everything had to do with data management. Those were the people who were opposed to a bigger block size. However, a not yet big majority said, look, We can fix it by increasing block size and in a turmoil, etc., etc. And as a result, 2017, 2018, the project BitcoinCash was initiated. It was born from the ideas of Roger Ver, whereby the block size, well, the sizes of the blocks on the Bitcoin blockchain were enlarged, and it resulted in a hard fork. We have on one side Bitcoin as we still know it. On the other side, you had a fork of Roger Ver with big blocks. It came to pass, BitcoinCash exists, and sadly enough, it didn't really have the success Roger thought it would. In the sense that, while initially plenty of people supported the idea of bigger blocks, pretty soon quite a lot of miners shifted their ideas and saw that BitcoinCash and bigger blocks didn't necessarily mean that the network was better, that it was more secure, that more profits could be made, that it was more profitable, etc., etc. So a switch went on, and some of those miners and people in support of enlarging the block size came back towards Bitcoin as it was. In the meantime, those who held on to Bitcoin as we know it, well, implemented their own fixes in the forms of Segwit, which was launched somewhere 2017, and Taproot, launched somewhere 2021. Both had to do with data management within the blocks. This in order to lower transaction fees. Now that we are on the topic of transaction fees, now plenty of people within the BitcoinCash and Bitcoin Satoshi vision, which in itself is another fork of BitcoinCash, will start quoting this chart and showing them to you, saying, look how high the fees were. We were initiated in 2017 when it was almost $55 per transaction at an all-time high. In 2021, almost equal and broken. And in the last couple of months, we can see here, especially since 2023, we have peaks almost double or triple previous ones, with the all-time high being 128. Now, this here, you need to see it in proper context. While yes, expressed in US dollars, can clearly see that transaction fees have risen. However, there are some subtleties here. There are some events within Bitcoin which need to be taken into account. Fundamental things which will put things in a different perspective. I want to show you guys this chart. Now, what are you seeing here? Well, we have three lines. The green line, what you're seeing here, are the max fees that could ever be paid over time. So you see there was, in the beginning, a lot of volatility. Why? Well, this was the period approximately up until 2011, where not many people were into Bitcoin. So each and every transaction, each and every movement, well, correlated with extreme moves. It only began to stabilize starting from 2011. And you can see, so that's in green, the maximum amount of fee ever paid. However, in blue, you see Bitcoin value per date. You can see this is a chart I'm going to show you guys on CoinGecko Max, and you can clearly see that the charts are quite frankly alike. I believe this one's logarithmic. I need to take it. There we go. We took a log chart. That's Bitcoin price setting since September 13 up until today. Same here, but much longer, and you can clearly see the trend. So blue is the price. What's in red? In red is indicated the minimum Bitcoin transaction fee at average, meaning the average transaction fee being paid. Now, what do we see here? Well, in the very beginning, we had much higher, take note of the red line, much higher fees in regards to amount of Satoshis or sats being paid. This went up until 2017, 2018. In this time period, Segwit was launched. This was a very first attempt to lower the costs of transaction fees. You can clearly see that 2018 we see a sudden drop, and the average minimum transaction fees at overall is much lower. Now you see it in 2021 and sometime into 2020, you see some higher fees being paid. This correlates with the Bitcoin bull run of 2021, which started somewhere October 2020 up until, well, was it here approximately? Yeah, summer 2021. We had a double peak, but now you can see here it flatline, and not unlike other bull runs and all-time highs. You see it goes flat, whereas here a new Bitcoin all-time high was launched. Reason thereof is in 2021, Taproot, second update to the Bitcoin network, was introduced to lower transaction fees. You can clearly see here, once Taproot was activated, that we are having an even lower transaction fees when solely expressed in Satoshis. Now, what am I saying here? Well, in reality, the average transaction fee for Bitcoin, in thanks to Segwit and Taproot, when expressed in Satoshis, has gone down. But how do I explain this one here? Well, quite frankly, this is explained by the higher valuation of Bitcoin increasing in value over time. You cannot compare the Bitcoin price here from 2018 with Bitcoin price of 2021. The reason in 2021, and let's look it up here, 2021, we were at 63,000 per Bitcoin. Whereas previous bull run, you were at 1/3. So if you take this chart in mind, or even this one, the fees here, the high peak, are actually a direct result of Bitcoin becoming more valuable. In a sense, I might even state it is a direct result of inflation and a loss of purchasing power of the US dollar and other fiat currencies. That is the main reason both of these are pretty much alike. It proves that Segwit, Taproot are doing their jobs properly. They have effectively lowered transaction costs, and you can quite clearly see it here in this chart with the red line. It's a dump and it goes down. However, something unusual happened, and that's the second part I want to discuss here, and it has to do with data management onto the blockchain. Now, with Segwit and Taproot activated, transaction fees when expressed in Satoshis were lowered. Naturally, with the loss of purchasing power of the US dollar, transaction fees when expressed in US dollar suddenly rose, and it gives the impression that, well, it doesn't work. In reality, it's the US dollar being a pain in the ass, quite frankly. Now, in 2023, something else occurred. I stated previously that with Segwit and Taproot, the implementation of those two major updates to the Bitcoin network, that the transaction fees when expressed in Satoshis was pretty much lowered, but it enabled something else. A little bug was sadly enough introduced with Taproot, and that bug is called Ordinals and Runes. Now, what are Ordinals and Runes? Well, those are NFTs on the Bitcoin blockchain, arbitrary data being saved onto the Bitcoin blockchain. Additional data being added towards the blockchain. Why am I stressing this out? Well, before Taproot activation, you could make inscriptions, but it were limited lines of text, not really data-heavy images, texts, audio, etc. Now, with Ordinals, suddenly, due to that bug, it could be done. And on, what was the date here? February 2023, Ordinals was already launched and active. We had one of the first major big blocks on the Bitcoin network. This is the theorized 4 megabyte block on the Bitcoin blockchain. This is nothing more than one ordinal taking up all the space. And you can clearly see here fee 206.25 US dollars in total. So to the fee, so it was before the halving. That's a big one. The smaller ones you're seeing here are real transactions still, so not an ordinal. As you can clearly see, plenty of real transactions, real peer-to-peer monetary transactions were effectively pushed aside as, well, I'm not going to say that this ordinal was paid for a premium, but it was at a reduced price that it took over an entire block and saved onto the blockchain. And it negated the implemented data management that Segwit and Taproot had introduced. Segwit and Taproot main goal was to lower transaction fees. And as you could see here on this chart in red, they were quite successful up until the bug was discovered and Ordinals was launched. And suddenly we are seeing high transaction fees once again. And while the block size wars never really subsided and even saw some revamping in 2021 with heightened network activity due to the bull run, they couldn't really make a hard case by reason of the red line I'm showing here with Segwit being launched. You can clearly see that at overall transaction fees were lower than ever before when expressed in Satoshis. And it was only deviating slightly due to higher network activity that we saw some higher transaction fees when expressed in US dollars. But in sats, still quite low. Like I said, appreciation of Bitcoin itself also led to heightened transaction fees by reason, one Satoshi becomes more valuable as Bitcoin itself becomes more valuable. So it is a necessity that things like Segwit and Taproot push downward transaction fees when expressed in sats. And they did so, but up until the point that the bug was discovered, as you can see here. So during this time, I'm going to say between 2019 up until mid-2021, the likes of BitcoinCash and Bitcoin SV, I'm going to call it, couldn't really make a hard case by reason when considering Bitcoin's value and network activity, and naturally the higher valuation of one Satoshi. Well, block size wasn't really of an issue. Block size wars 2.0, as I like to call it, was more initiated when actually, if I have to put on a dateline here, was initiated 1st February of 2023 when the first big block was launched. Actually, since the launch of Ordinals, I dare say. But I'm going to say this is a historic moment, not only for the Ordinals guys, but for the Bitcoin network as well. By reason, this is the first big block whereby all previous efforts for data management were literally thrown into the trash. And this rekindled the block size wars by reason that, well, ever since Ordinals came to be, the transaction fees started raising up again by reason that the Bitcoin blockchain is being spammed by arbitrary data. And a counter movement has started. On Twitter, you will, well, on my Twitter account and plenty of others, if you follow a little bit the core developers and Bitcoin fundamental enthusiasts, you will see the hashtag fix the filters. It has to do with negating arbitrary data like ordinals and runes and keep them away from the Bitcoin blockchain. By reason, we believe that Bitcoin itself, its use case, needs to be pure. It needs to be 100% peer-to-peer electronic cash system, which means pure financial transactions, meaning only transacting Bitcoin, not posting additional smart contracts, not posting additional, not deploying smart contracts, not making additional inscriptions on the Bitcoin blockchain. By reason, it takes up way too many data onto the block. As you could see here, this is now an extreme example, but you can get a gist here, which pushes downward the true use case and results in, well, transaction costs like these, as you can see. So that's one of the main reasons, fix the filters. So in short, you could say that the gist of the block size war in Bitcoin, starting in 2017 and now at block size war 2.0, is that one side wants to implement bigger blocks so more data can be stored. In a sense, they want more and faster profit. And people like me want to keep the Bitcoin block size. However, we stress out the more important mindful and thoughtful data management within the Bitcoin blocks. More mindful transactions. And with that, you really do mean Bitcoin being transacted from one person to another, being used as, well, monetary payment system. It's really that simple. So no arbitrary data, no inscriptions, pure payment method, period. The discussion arises because big blocks are about trading BTC for fiat. Partially true. I'm be getting deeper into that. So yeah. Now, who was the biggest loser in the block size wars? Well, quite frankly, BitcoinCash or the big blockers. This is easily shown. This is a first tweet I'm going to apply. I'm going to give you reasons why the big block narrative has failed. So market has rejected big blocks. BitcoinCash is doing 7 to 8 transactions per minute, while Bitcoin is doing hundreds and also has Lightning Network to boot, meaning there is a scaling solution to avoid paying those high fees. Well, you can do payments on the Bitcoin blockchain peer-to-peer directly on main chain. There exists a layer 2, which is called the Lightning Network, which opens up channels between active nodes, which enables to help process transactions go faster through, but at the same time lowers transaction fees. Because at this point, all I've talked about are transaction fees on chain. I haven't addressed the advantages Lightning Network brings. In short, what does Lightning Network bring to the table? Low transaction fees and much quicker settlements. How do they do so? Well, you take your Bitcoin, you put it on a Lightning wallet, very briefly and in plain English described here, put it into a Lightning wallet. That Lightning wallet is connected towards a node, Lightning node, which finds the fastest way by which transaction or through which nodes can verify the transaction being made. So it gets much quicker saved onto the blockchain. It lowers transaction fees by some kind of roll-up, I dare say, meaning that, well, if you know that a new block is mined every 10 minutes, the Lightning channel will take the Bitcoin through the channels that is being transferred, I'm going to say. A small transaction fee is still deduced on the Lightning Network, but much lower than what you're seeing here on screen. This is compounded, and at the end of the day, if the block is mined, total fee is deduced, and actually all transaction fees paid for through the Lightning Network are being used to cover the final transaction fee to make it on chain, and it is being done through a coin join, so multiple multiple transactions are at that point being put together and saved as one big block onto a main chain. Perhaps we can have an example here. I'm going to reset. There we go. So, and that's when I'm talking about coin joins. There isn't much here. Consolidation, perhaps. Yeah. So consolidations, coin joins is when multiple transactions are being set as a block. You can see bigger sizes from time to time, but yeah, I need to tell as well. Consolidation is well, consolidating your TXOs, and it can be arbitrary data, or it can be simple coin joins. Most of the time, it's a little bit of a mix of all of it, but you get the gist. Data, those are the runes that you are seeing. Anyway, where was I? Nope. Yeah. So BitcoinCash. Here's a little comparison and some reasons why it has failed. Now, like I said, BitcoinCash was initiated in 2017, launched, and it took a greater portion of the Bitcoin community with it. However, like I earlier said, that part of the Bitcoin community eventually came back as they saw that the Bitcoin Cash narrative of bigger blocks failed tremendously. And you can see it here in the amount of transactions and in the values being done. These are the transactions block per block in Bitcoin versus Bitcoin Cash. 3-hour time frame, Bitcoin does almost 2,800, Bitcoin Cash only 70 on a daily basis. Bitcoin did 3,400. Bitcoin Cash didn't reach higher than 82, meaning not a lot is being done on the Bitcoin Cash network, despite its how to say, seemingly more positive, seemingly better infrastructure, meaning the markets and the people themselves said, we do not believe in it. Another metric we can compare to, are the nodes, so the people who are supporting the network. I find this a much better indication than the previously mentioned amount of transactions. By reason, when you are looking up the various nodes, you can see how many people are really dedicated in upkeeping the network. And currently, we are talking about active nodes to date worldwide. For Bitcoin, we are at 19,566 reachable nodes at all times. Some go offline, some go online, all depending on time zone, computers being on or off, etc., etc. To remind yourself, we are talking about nodes, not about miners. If we included miners, this number would probably be much higher. Then we have the Bitcoin Cash nodes. Where is it? So yeah, 469 active nodes. 19,566 for 469 or 470. This implies that a whole lot less of people are supporting Bitcoin Cash. A whole lot of people do not believe in supporting the system. Now, 470 is still a nice number when compared to other cryptocurrency, but it is relatively low. And I might, and I dare even say, these amount of nodes can easily be achieved by a single company, by which each employee is running 2 or 3 active nodes, which is very easily done. With Bitcoin itself, that's a very big number. Anyway, perhaps it's a shitty comparison, but do realize this is extremely low. networks, yeah. I mean, fun part here is these are the nodes being run through companies. This is Amazon, miscellaneous, so that's users like you and I, 192. Ship, I don't know. Hudson, I don't know. I know AWS, that's Amazon, Google. I mean, it's bad. It's extremely bad. Another metric on my increased block size. Enlarged block size has failed has to do here with the Bitcoin meme hub, whereby they compare the Bitcoin block size as it is now with those of BitcoinCash and Bitcoin SV, which have dynamic block size or bigger blocks. And well, it is as the guy here on Twitter says. Look at the chart. Bitcoin has consistently almost the same block size, whereas both big block camps, Bcash and Bcash SV, have widely fluctuating block sizes. Okay, whenever they spam the blockchain, but interestingly, they are still mostly under Bitcoin's block size, meaning that they have lessened activity, which is okay, which is fine by me. But it does underline more or less that bigger blocks weren't necessarily a solution, by reason that all traffic that they are seeing on their networks, well, can still be done on the Bitcoin blockchain. So their existence, in a certain sense, is obsolete. Perhaps for investors, it's a good thing to have an alternative, but currently, nah, not really. And now we come to more fundamental parts why bigger blocks aren't better and even worse. And this is posted by Direct Delta. Smaller blocks would still be better. If 4 megabyte blocks are filled, a 1 terabyte SSD will not let you full node in 3 years, and a 2 terabyte SSD will not be big enough before the end of the decade. This boils down to supporting the network with your nodes. You see, in order to support your network and you want to run a node, you need to download the entire blockchain history, which means that the amount of activity and amount of data being saved onto the blockchain matters for your hardware in order to run it. Now, with Bitcoin, we had in the beginning 1 megabyte blocks, and we reached the theoretic maximum of 4 megabyte blocks somewhere February 2023. Now, all that data needs to be saved onto your computer, which means that it becomes extremely important that you have decent memory available on the computer in order to run your node. And well, the thing is, if you're working with bigger blocks, it also means more data can be saved. It also means, talking about hardware, that the hardware you will be needing to run a node becomes so much more expensive, so much more bigger. And in a certain sense, what Direct Delta is mentioning here is that you will need to replace your hardware on much shorter notice. And that is one of the reasons why I'm so countered against Ordinals and Runes. They are posting arbitrary data onto the blockchain. They fill up the blocks with trash data, meaning that we still need to change our hardware on a much shorter timescale. Now, luckily, this is, I'm not going to say negated, but halted partially in regards to the limited block size of the Bitcoin blockchain, the 1 megabyte blocks. However, with BitcoinCash and Bitcoin SV, they have bigger blocks, which allow for more arbitrary data to be saved, which means at overall, their blockchain will be much bigger in memory usage, will be much bigger in data that needs to be saved on a hard disk, meaning that your hardware needs to be replaced much faster, that your nodes will need to be replaced much further. This is an additional cost that needs to be made. And that's one of the, from what I believe, brain farts and things that the big blockers have overlooked. They are pushing the costs away towards the miners and the node runners, meaning that, okay, we have lower transaction fees, fine by me, but that cost is being pushed towards the miners and the node runners, meaning that the revenue they are having will become much lower due to more intensive hardware replacement. So in a sense, are they saying, look, with the network, we can allow for more transactions to take place, we can allow for more data to be saved, but at the same time, the cost of doing so is being pushed towards the miner and the node runners. You need to understand this is a very delicate balance. You need to save the data, agreed, but you need to put in a certain limit. You need to find a decent balance between hardware replacement and the costs associated with it, and actually network activity. Bitcoin at the moment does so and has this nice equilibrium up until Ordinals came about, but which shall hopefully be fixed within the 4 years. All in all, we can still luckily say that for Bitcoin, due to its limited block size, we do not need to replace our hardware for running nodes and miners as quickly as we will need to do for BitcoinCash or Bitcoin SV if they were faced with the same network traffic. So in that sense, we might say that if BitcoinCash and Bitcoin SV saw the same amount of network activity as Bitcoin does, rest assured they would fail much quicker than anticipated. They would be losing quite a lot security-wise in hash rate, in nodes being run, which is already quite low, as I have shown here with their 470 active nodes, whereas Bitcoin has still 17,000. Yeah. So they will be losing network security, meaning they are more open towards 51% attacks towards their consensus. That is one fundamental aspect which is deliberately ignored by the people in Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin SV communities and the people, or well, let's just say Roger Ver in totality. On that account, Roger Ver wrote a book, and as you can see, 15th of April, and it is about the block size wars due to ordinals, like I said, and runes being activated last year in February, well, slightly earlier than last year, but somewhere February 2023. He wrote a book whereby he claims that Bitcoin as we know it has been hijacked. Now, do remember, Roger Ver is the CEO of BitcoinCash. BitcoinCash, which since its inception has failed to fix the problems with Bitcoin, of what Roger Ver and the BitcoinCash community said, which I have already proven by comparing the active nodes, price action. If you compare Bitcoin towards BitcoinCash, you'll quickly see, you can do the thing here, you can see Bitcoin price logarithmically going upward, BitcoinCash, where is it? Over time remained relatively stable, meaning no real interest was about. Anyway, he wrote a little book called Hijacking Bitcoin, whereby he shares his views on why Bitcoin as we know it has been hijacked. And Fred Krueger, a renowned influencer slash scammer, I'm going to say, has read a book and summarized a few core arguments. We'll be covering them because I'll be addressing those main points and why the reasoning is flawed. So he said Bitcoin was intended for peer-to-peer transactions. Keeping block size deliberately low, fees are absurdly high now, currently $6 versus pennies in 2010. High fees have killed the ability. Lightning doesn't work. Now Bitcoin has become a store of value. Cost arguments for storage data made in 2016 no longer make any sense in 2024. Small block's main argument was people need to run their own nodes, but very few people actually do. Do not forget, these are the arguments made by a BitcoinCash CEO. You know, BitcoinCash, Bitcoin. Look at the nodes. And then the statement. Even though BCA got its fork, it lost because the brand Bitcoin was hijacked by BTC. Yeah. I'm going to share rebuttals. Was intended for peer-to-peer transactions, still is the case. Now, important note here that I make is that it was intended as a peer-to-peer electronic cash system, something which I mentioned earlier. Pure financial transactions. So not transactions with arbitrary data, pure peer-to-peer electronic cash system. And that's a little bit of semantics and wordplays that Roger Ver is doing, because, as I said here, saying transactions means that they are accepting to scams like ordinals, which Bitcoin wasn't created for. And I will have to admit, if ordinals were implemented on BitcoinCash, that would have been a better fit due to their bigger block size, due to their ability to process more data per blocks. How I see Bitcoin is, as intended and written here, peer-to-peer electronic cash system as money to be used as a currency. Not some data cloud storage system with smart contracts being deployed with NFTs. Nope. Talking about real financial transactions. Not secondary use as data, cloud data storage. So that point, like I said, semantics. He's making a non-argument. He's being inclusive where things shouldn't be. Another statement by keeping block size deliberately low, fees are absurdly high now. In reality, fees are still low. Higher fees currently are a result of spam attacks like ordinals, as mentioned, which have no place on Bitcoin. Back in 2010 was a chain barely used when it costed pennies. Bitcoin was but 1 year old back then and didn't have the amount of activity it has now, as I have illustrated with this chart, where plenty of volatility is. I also made the argument that back in the day, transaction fees, when expressed in Satoshis, were actually much higher. But we need to take into account the valuation of Bitcoin to date, meaning that in all actuality, the transaction fees back then were much higher than they are now due to the amount of sats being paid. Simple as that. That's a little tidbit our friend Roger Ver and Fred Kruger here do not seem to get. Bitcoin has become more valuable, but fees, when expressed in Satoshis, have become lower, meaning that low fees still currently are as such. They are low. It's only due to the higher Bitcoin evaluation in combination with the ordinal spam that they seem much higher. So this is one of the cases whereby, well, one of the cases is, it is one of the facts why I'm standing behind Fix the Filters and doing more thoughtful data management. Now, despite all that, plenty of people will still look up onto the mempool and, well, you see 6 sats per VByte, and this is the actual price you are now paying for a real peer-to-peer transaction. So if I make a transaction in Bitcoin, low priority and high priority, these are the values I'm paying. It's still in the pennies. The only transactions which are so high in value tend to be data ordinals. Keep that in mind. These high fees have killed the ability to use Bitcoin for small transactions. Fees are still manageable, and if we talk about Lightning Network, very small transaction amounts over $2 still work. On that account, you could ask yourself, when was the last time you bought something which cost less than $5? It is a non-argument. Drawing back towards what I said earlier. Real transaction costs peer-to-peer are very low. I can make payments of less than $5 with these transaction fees. They are okay for me. My transaction fees, these guys, is it? Yeah, that Fred Krueger and Roger Ver are talking about includes ordinals, which have no place and which cost several hundreds of dollars. But they are not real currency transactions. They do not have the monetary, well, they do not follow the peer-to-peer electronic cash system use case. That's a big difference here. And you can see that a narrative is being built here, a narrative based on false premises. They want inclusion where none should actually be. Now, naturally, I made mention here of Lightning Network, and in his fourth point, because why not, Lightning doesn't work, so now BTC has just become a store of value. Lightning Network works as designed. It's not at any outage, and plenty of companies use it. He makes the Lightning Network doesn't work argument as it undermines his own shitcoin called BCH. I know I'm being a little obtuse there, but Lightning Network is a scaling solution, and social media websites like Nostr and plenty of other mining pools and companies have and are making use of the Lightning Network. It works, period. Plenty of people are using it, especially in the global south, where hyperinflation is even more tremendous and lower, loans, I would say no, whereby I forgot a word in English, sorry. Where people are getting paid less when compared to Western countries, I'm going to put it that way. Their Lightning Network is a literal lifesaver, and in my interviews I did last year and the years before with plenty of people from Africa, Lightning Network works there and is a literal lifesaver. So this is a narrative being built by reason it undermines all that he has said up until now, which I already debunked in the text. Cost arguments for storage that are made in 2016 no longer make any sense in 2024. Argument still stands. Bigger block means more hosting capacity is needed. I mean, if you have bigger blocks, more data can be saved per block, which means that the memory you're using on your hard disk drive or your soft disk drive, whatever, needs to become bigger exponentially. So it's like I said here, bigger block means more hosting capacity is needed. Roger Ver fails to realize that it is an exponential curve when it concerns data storage. Even though we currently have drives with higher capacity storage than 2016, the investment still needs to be made for upgrading. And like I said, it is exponential. I have now a disk with memory of 1 terabyte that I can use. But rest assured, if I have 4 megabyte blocks standard filled to the brim, one after another, every 10 minutes, rest assured, in 2 or 3 years, that 1 terabyte drive isn't going to cut it. Now, with the block size limit of Bitcoin of 1 megabyte, despite the theoretical 4 megabyte, and we're currently slightly higher, my 1 terabyte drive can keep up until, I'm not going to say next year, but for the forthcoming 2 or 3 years, it can keep up. But if it gets bigger, yeah, I'm sorry, but I mean, it means next year I will need to upgrade my node. So that's one of the things of importance. The hardware investments are being pushed through. The second you take bigger blocks, and it is an exponential curve. A doubling means a halving of the time that you can use your disk. If you have 4 megabyte at overall, well, it's exponential. It means a quarter of the time needed before I need to replace the hard drive. It is a valid argument. It means you are going through you are cycling through hardware much faster. You are moving the cost, transaction fees, up towards the miners, whereby it becomes less profitable and in turn they say, okay, we can't keep up, it becomes too costly, we will need to shut down our nodes or miners, or make much more bigger investments into hardware in order to secure, which means bigger budgets are needed in order to secure the network, meaning less and less people are being reached in order to help protect the network and upkeep it. It's a simple metric. Next up, small blockers' main argument was people need to run their own nodes, but very few people actually do. Not lying there. We strongly advise people running their own nodes as it heightens blockchain security. Correct. Node runners are the literal police. You also seem to forget that BCH was the same principle as Bitcoin. More nodes, the better. If you vouch for as low nodes as possible, you are vouching for lessened security and even centralization. Once again, I'm going to show this here, BitcoinCash nodes, Bitcoin nodes. Where is it? Yeah. So you can clearly see it is a bullshit argument. He is talking against his very own fork. Even though BCH got its fork, it's lost because the brand Bitcoin was hijacked by BTC. It's like I said earlier, more likely that people simply did not buy the BitcoinCash rhetoric. After all, they forked from the established chain. Majority of miners and nodes were in agreement who would have had bigger blocks as a standard. Just like in politics, you can't claim that your opposition hijacked votes if the majority of the population voted in favor of said opposition. Bitcoin is a pure democratic system. The majority voted for Bitcoin as it is now, something Roger does not seem to understand or is willing to accept. And then I, well, ended perhaps with a little insult, but that's the gist of it. They made a fork, they made a promise, this is better than Bitcoin, and people in the end went back to the original Bitcoin because they saw the flaws of BitcoinCash and Bitcoin SV. The flaws I just came to highlight where it concerns hardware, where it concerns costs, etc., etc. Now, like I said, I'm a fan of fix the filters, so null block mined. And then came about, once again, the discussion of transaction fees. Are Bitcoin blocks being mined without ordinals more lucrative, yes or no? And my answer is yes. By reason, real transactions take up less V-bytes. As you can see here, the amount of sats per V-byte, meaning that's the amount of satoshis you are going to pay per virtual byte or per place your transaction takes up in the block itself. And quite frankly, I'm going to show you guys this. I did a math, and well, you can read it for yourself. I'm going to read it with you. Math, Ordinals is cheating us from long-term rewards. What we are seeing now are temporal profits that are not sustainable and even averaging lower than what potentially could be had. Ordinals push rewards up due to eating up block space while out cheating the transactions. We could see that quite clearly with this one. In the long term, is it programmed that the transaction fees will outrank the rewards from mining? That is fact, and we are really talking about 2 to 3 halvings straight into the future. At that point, transaction fees will outrank the Coinbase reward. It will indeed be spread on my transaction fight for block space to be included, but now there is an overinflation. Simple math, this is the gist of the issue. 2,800 transactions of 300 bytes, in size paying 1 sat per V byte plus 200 sats in priority attacks is that amount of satoshis. This here are traditional transactions, real peer-to-peer financial transactions, so no arbitrary data. You can see quite a high number of sats. And then we talk ordinals. One transaction of 840,000 bytes in size which pays 200 sats in priority, I come down to a minor reward and transaction fees of that. Now, I do not need to tell you guys that this number is much lower than this one. And that's basically the gist of mining arbitrary data-free blocks. More transactions can be saved per block, meaning that more transaction fees are being paid by people, which benefit the miners more greatly. Yeah, later on for that. So that's the reasons why I'm saying fix the filters. And referring back to Ted Kruger here, Fred Kruger, sorry. Where was it? Yeah, with the narrative where it concerns, first, saying transactions. With that, he wants to include ordinals, meaning he is in support of cheating out miners from revenue by allowing for bigger data to be saved onto their blocks. They have the bigger blocks, so his reasoning is we can handle it because we have more block space and our transaction fees will not grow as much. Now, what he seemingly forgets is if your blocks are bigger, more data indeed can be stored, which means ordinals implemented on the BitcoinCash blockchain will also grow in size. Now, the maximum amount was 4 megabytes, which we saw here. But with them, it's going to be exponentially larger, and it's not going to be an image. It's going to be full-on videos and movies, and the problem wouldn't be fixed. You would be seeing high transaction fees on BitcoinCash as well. And naturally, all the problems that I highlighted already with the quicker replacement of hardware due to a more heavier blockchain which needs to be saved onto the memory. Bitcoin SV is even worse because they have dynamic block sizes, which means, unlimited use or unlimited block size, meaning their blockchain can become infinitely big depending on the data that is being saved. So increasing block size isn't really a good move. Hence why I'm once again going to stress pure financial transactions, pure peer-to-peer transactions, electronic cash system. I highlighted this because most big blockers, BitcoinCash, Bitcoin SV, want to put Lightning Network into a bad light. By reason, it undermines their narrative of low transaction fees and channeling a maximum amount of transactions onto main chain. And that's basically what I'm telling here. Because it defeats and destroys all big block narratives. Their main narrative for a big block is more data, more transactions can be stored. Whereas with Lightning Network, it's a scaling solution. It wraps up a variety of transactions and puts it as one smaller coin join transaction onto main chain, meaning that there's better data management going on onto the Bitcoin blockchain, meaning that big blocks aren't really needed. So they will start attacking Lightning Network for that reason alone. It undermines the big block narrative. They also say Lightning Network doesn't work, no one uses it, but in reality, global South Africa, South America, etc., Lightning Network is quite intensively used. And it is a fully functional scaling solution because it has never had a blackout ever since over time. It is being supported by individuals, and Joel Valenzuela, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, said here 25% down since the early 2022 peak, turns out down 35%. Everything has to do naturally as well with transaction fees and the need for certain channels to remain updated. I mean, 2022 peak, there was a lot of network activity. It was the end of a bull run. So network activity is going down. So it implies keeping open certain channels aren't really needed. So it's normal that we're seeing channels slowing down, and active Lightning nodes, by not seeing too much activity, closing down. It's a normal thing, but they will mention it as a little thing to destroy the credibility of the Lightning Network. They do not take into account the real metrics, the real reasons why it occurs. They just want to see it go down. Like I said, I'm a big fan of Fix the Filters. As it is all about data management of the Bitcoin network, by reason you cannot infinitely scale block sizes, it is a little bit like congestion on roads. You have a few solutions in order to fix it. The big blockers are saying, okay, we are going to enlarge the road so that more cars can drive on it. Okay, but at the same time, when you do so, congestion isn't fixed. You still have transactions taking up too much space. And before you know it, are you allowing more cars to drive on said road, appropriately speaking, and congestion reoccurs after a while. Now, when I talk data management with Fix the Filters, what I'm saying is, let's be more smart about this. Instead of making the roads bigger, how about we make the cars smaller, more compact? Or let us place buses, whereby multiple people are in one vehicle, which takes slightly more space than your average car, but is still in size more compact than the cars that drivers on the bus would have been driven, which means in size you become much more compact and congestion is no longer an issue. That's why I'm in support of Fix the Filters and thinking about data management on the Bitcoin network. Implementing big blocks is just no-go. You aren't really fixing the issue. You are just pushing it further down the road and putting the costs with the miners and themselves and the node runners. So it's not a very smart move. That's why I say Bitcoin is to be used as a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. Obvious people who are currently hysterical about ordinals. Like I said, with ordinals, the argument is not about big blocks. It is about respecting use case. Once again, referring towards the Bitcoin use case of electronic peer-to-peer cash system. Ordinals are trash data, and Bitcoin is about peer-to-peer electronic cash system, not being a data cloud storage. It is not your Google Drive, it's not OneDrive. It is a ledger for monetary transactions. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So we need to respect use case, and we need to implement data management. No, in the long term, the transaction fee will skyrocket as adoption occurs, but at that time, will it be combined with efficient block space use, which will turn out more profitable for the miners and nodes, like I mentioned. Where was it? Yeah, in this argument. After all, 3,000 transactions with a fee of 5 USD is much better than 5 transactions with a fee of 200 USD. That's $1,000, that's 15,000. You can clearly see the difference here. And even then, I am exaggerating with current fees. Ejecting and preventing inscriptions and ordinals now is tantamount in order to maintain a healthy ecosystem right now. So basically, I'm saying keep the arbitrary data out of it. Real Bitcoin community needs to start focusing on data management, on kicking out all arbitrary data and all the trash data that is currently being saved. And you will see that the Bitcoin ecosystem itself is much stronger and resilient than the Bitcoin cashers and Bitcoin SVs are trying to narrate and try to debunk. Simple as that. There's another little conversation / discussion I had. It's the last one. So yeah, it's wrong. Airline industry is private public sector healthcare. Bitcoin is a public square and free market. Bitcoin works and is censorship resistant, not because Blocksize is a regulated market, but because it is not. But it was said it's wrong. Without regulations on Bitcoin block space, Bitcoin would fail to be censorship resistant because few would be able to afford the storage to run a node. Correct. Regulating block space usage ensures the economic incentives of Bitcoin align with Bitcoin's intended purpose, just like I said with all the arguments during this entire live stream. Here's a rebuttal. We need transaction fees of 50 to 50, 100, or even high in the future, which will also be unaffordable for most people, which is wrong, like I said. Data management geared towards BTC's use case first and foremost. Big blocks are a non-solution, is proven by failures of that is not referring to big blocks. I acknowledge the significance of small blocks, but block sizes are progressively decreasing in proportion to tech advancements. How can we address the issue of 100 plus transaction fees? These fees are essential to fund the network's security. As said, block size is fixed. When I talk data management, I talk about the data stored in the blocks, how to efficiently store by looking at what kind of data, trash or not, and how to properly organize it for most efficient storage and avoid congestion. Meaning bigger blocks are not needed. It is how high transaction fees are to be addressed. We begin by ejecting the trash data, its ordinals and inscriptions, and prevent further trash data to be saved. After that is sorted out, can we take a look at the transaction hashes and find means and methods to group or compact them to increase the amount of transactions to be saved per block, which, once again, perhaps I didn't make it really clear in that tweet, refers back towards this argument I made. Less V bytes in real monetary transactions, and if you do the math, low transaction fees allow for more transactions to take place, which is much more sustainable, real transactions versus high transaction fee for one big block. As I said, it can be simple as that. With that, I want to say that the block size wars aren't really a wars. It is a narrative to promote the shitcoins that are BitcoinCash and Bitcoin SV, by reason that the narrative sounds good and the solution at base level might sound good, but as soon as you realize and start calculating the effects of doing so, you quite frankly are going to be seeing a lot of dirt. Like I said, you will be seeing costs being pushed towards miners and nodes will require bigger budgets in order to help secure the network, which results in a less secure network. At the same time, it allows for opening up the doors for abuse of the network itself as a data cloud storage system, while at the same time, it doesn't really fix the issue of high transaction fees, because it doesn't address the data management which should occur within the blocks. It is, how to say, big blocks are a non-thought over solution, whereby now a narrative is being revamped due to the Ordinals and Runes stuff going on. Is narrative being revamped in order to gain some credibility and market share for something which has already been proven. Yeah, perhaps I'm going to give a little intake here. So I've written a Bitcoin mining standard. I still have it open here. It is a little guide I've written for people who want to start mining Bitcoin. Yeah, I'm not going to get deeper into it. If you want to start mining Bitcoin but don't know how to do it profitably, I'm going to say download or buy a Bitcoin mining standard book I've written, which explains in depth the various setups you can do, calculation on profitability, as well as quite a lot of information on how to set up a renewable Bitcoin mining farm for at home, or even if you are a VC wants to start with Bitcoin mining. Some fundamental knowledge on wallet addresses, what SHA-256 is, private keys, public keys, etc. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and end the live stream. So I hope you guys found it interesting, despite a few F-ups in language I made. Now, if you have questions, remarks, or want to share something, please do so in the comments down below. Reach out to me on social media. With that, I'm going to say thank you all for watching, and until next time. Bye.